Okay, so that's us live. Welcome to episode 36 of the Refuge Chamber. I am joined today by Rod Caddies, real life cowboy and member of One Nation political group. Rod, first topic, mate, would have been the traffic coming down. You're not the first person that's been stuck in that in the past. There's a few guests that have come at the same time on a Friday and they message and they live like an hour away. And 2.5 hours later, they're still stuck in traffic coming down that freeway. So it's a bit of a disaster, and I apologise. Maybe I should change the time of the podcast to accommodate people coming down from north a little bit. But welcome on the show, mate. It's a pleasure to have you here. I've seen you jump on a few times, commenting and saying hi, and it's good to get you in and finally get to have a chat with you.
It's good to be here, Greg. Thanks for the invite.
No problem at all. When I first came across a rodeo, I was in the army for a few years, and I was in Canada at Calgary. I think it was just after the Calgary Stampede, and it was in a little town called Medicine Hat. And we had a day off, or we had a week off, and I went along, and there was a rodeo. I saw the posters. I thought, I'll go see this. I grew up on a farm, riding horses and all this stuff, so I thought this would be really good to see. So I went along, watched this rodeo, had a couple of beers in the stands, and I was blown away. Right? Loved it. It was the best thing I've ever seen, and still is. And the rodeo clowns were just the best. They were the most entertainment. I followed that rodeo for a week. I watched that first show, went off. Everything it did around Calgary, I followed it for a week, watching everything. And I was engrossed. And I actually came to one of your rodeo fests at one point. There was a 4-wheel drive competition on up Mundaring Way, I'm sure it was, or just north of Mundaring maybe. And I'm pretty sure that you had a bull show on, and I turned up, and I'd actually messaged you on Facebook about this bull.
Yeah, I remember, mate.
Yeah.
I remember you coming along.
And at the time, I was suffering with a bit of anxiety and stuff, and it really got to me because I put my name down to ride the bull. That's all right. I put the name down to ride the bull, and
sorry about that.
No,
I was
you're
trying
right,
to share your podcast here, but it's...
you're right. At least you know it's working.
Sorry about that.
You're right. And the worst thing happened. So this young girl got on a couple of rides before I was supposed to do it, and she came off. And as she came off, her head hit the railings as she went. And one of the big fears, the only thing that bothered me about riding one was getting hung up and not being able to get off.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened a couple of rides before me, and it blew me. I said, I'm not doing it. Devastated. It's one of a big regret was not turning up that day and doing it. I was all set to go. But there you go. But I've been to one of your rodeo shows. Even if it wasn't one of your biggest, it was a fantastic day again. And those rodeo clowns, I take my hat off to them.
It's definitely a good adrenaline rush for anyone that's into that sort of thing.
So you've stopped. Have you found it? Is it done? The share?
Oh yes, I can share it as we were discussing before. You've got to sort of work out what's going on because we've never shared it from this live feed before, and
there should be a share button on the bottom though.
It looks like you can share it from what I can see. You can share it to my personal page. I was trying to share it to an actual page, but it doesn't actually look like you can share it to a page.
Oh, right, okay.
Anyway, but
that's a lesson for me as well, and it can only go to your personal one.
Oh, wait a sec. I think I might have found it, Greg. Here we go. Better try.
This is an education for me as well in the sharing.
Start watch party by the looks of that. There we go. We'll try that. Let's go. I'll drop that down there now. So
see
I'm
what
not
happens.
Worst
case scenario, mate, we can do it at the end of the show as well if it helps. And you were saying earlier that you don't ride anymore.
No, not after. Had a lot of broken bones. You know, it's that didn't worry me, but it was the broken pelvis with the plates and screws. Now that sort of ended my ability to ride as such, not my desire to ride.
No, I can imagine, yeah. But what was it, a specific accident? Did the bull land on you, or was it just a freak where you fell off?
No, it's the bull landed on me once before, and I think it must have, because I'd been injured the week before and the bull had landed on me, but the following week I went to a rodeo, and when I bailed off the bull after the ride, when I came down on my feet, it just went ping. It sort of obviously was half broken or something. It was already injured from the week before. So yeah, that's what really finished me on it.
It just looks like a massive stress on the body to ride a bull. When you watch it, these rodeo fests, if you watch it on TV, it's better because they get the slow-mos and the bull is off the floor and you can see the back of the rider hitting the arse of the bull, slamming him back and forth.
It's a lot of
I just
G-force
think,
there.
oh, that's not going to be good for your back, is it?
No, I don't know. Your back actually doesn't cop a lot of hiding on the bull. It's you get your core strength up. It's pretty good. Yeah, no, it's more your arm and it's not too bad actually. It's a lot. There is a lot of G-force there, but it's not too bad on the back.
It looks to me like that is the thing that's going to snap. If I got sat there and whipped back and forth like this, I can't think of anything worse. Or your neck.
No, I think it's more hitting the ground is usually the part that hurts the most.
With the bull on
rest
top
of it's actually not too bad.
Well, those rodeo clowns do a great job because they come in so quick, don't they? And they've literally run head on into this bull, put their hand out onto its nose and just deflect its attention away from the rider on the floor. They get fascinating.
They're our guardian angels.
How do you talk those guys into doing that?
Oh, I tell you what, I guess there's just them certain people in life that just look for the thrill, and these guys, because I tell you what, I've jumped in front of a few bulls before on practice days and that, and I think it's a bit hairier in front of the bull they're doing that than it is getting on the back of them, that's for sure. So yeah, it's definitely a bit scary. All
right, your history is it farming you do as well?
Well, I don't do farming now. I grew up on a farm, earlier in my life. So yeah, it started off down in Manjimup, Pemberton way. Yeah, so as a kid.
Yeah, and that got you into the rodeo scene, did it?
Well, it started me off. We started off, I can remember as a little tacker jumping on the rams, just having a bit of a ride, and then I ended up heading up north, working on a station, and jumped on a steer there a bit, and but not with ropes and all that. It was just a bit of a muck around, and it wasn't until I got back to Perth after I had a bit of experience out on the stations and that my nephews were riding the rodeos, and they said, "Oh, Uncle Rod, come along, come and jump on a bull, and
as you do.
You're mad enough. You'd be a good bull rider." So I said, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." And they were like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure thing." And that's how it all. And yeah, it just was become a passion for me. That first ride, I went, "Oh, I love this."
So did you ride a full-grown bull at the beginning, or did you start on something smaller?
No. First rodeo I just jumped on a rodeo and jumped on a bull. Entered up and just jumped on a bull and had a pretty good ride on my first ride. So yeah, it was good fun.
How long is it you got to start? Is it 10 seconds?
8 seconds.
How long did you do when you first?
Just prior to 8, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the scoring? If you don't stay on for 8,
you don't get a score. With bull riding, you have to be on the bull for 8 seconds, and then you get a score.
Right.
And so a judge scores you out of 50 and the bull out of 50 on how much it bucks.
Just for that 8 seconds, nothing to do with if you stay on for 9, 10 or
no. You bail off after the 8 seconds. your job's done. Your scoring's all in that 8 seconds.
Crazy. Yeah. It was fascinating to watch, and it really, when I was in Canada, I was amazed by these guys. Not only that, but they're on the horseback, and they let the cow out the side, and off they go after it and rope it, tie it up, and they're all timed to get back on their horse after they've done that. They're just fascinating guys, and I took my hat off. They looked so strong doing that. They get a headlock in this bull and taking it to the deck, but I'm sure there's a lot more technique to it than there is actually overpowering it.
Steer wrestling, they bail off onto the steer, and it's what they used to do back in the day before, we've got modern technology and that, so that was what they used to do.
So from there, at what point did you join the army, and what was it you joined up as?
I was in the reserves. I was in the Army Reserves for quite a few years. I was in 10th Light Horse and in the Armoured Corps. Yep. So that was earlier on in the piece before I started doing all the bull riding and that. You had mortgages and stuff.
Nasty stuff.
Yeah. So I enjoyed my time in there. Had a lot of fun there.
Okay. Did you go anywhere? Did you go overseas?
No. Just really didn't get away. Being a reserve unit, I guess it's in certain reserve units you end up overseas, but not so much in Australia. I don't think. Probably more in America and maybe the UK, I'm not sure, but in Australia a lot.
Yeah, they got attached to us quite a bit. When we went to Iraq, they'd come with us and they'd make up our numbers and come and do something. But they were a different breed to the regular soldiers, I think, and I think they had their eyes lit up quite a bit when they came and hung out with us boys.
Yeah, I think it was a good thing we trained. When you went through basic training here, you went through the training at Kapuka just the same as everybody.
Oh, right.
You went through the same training and then you decide, and at the end, now they're deciding whether you're going to go reserves or regular. So
okay, the reserve scene's interesting because they used to have national service back in the UK. There's some people that still cry out to have it because the youth are going off the rails and they got no direction, and they're thinking that maybe if they put them back into a bit of a military style, it might ground them a bit.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I loved my time there. I think it taught me a lot, and it really, I think it challenges you to really be your best, but I'm not sure that it would be for everyone, and especially not now that it's not around. I'm not sure about what you would think, but if you remember back through basic training or when you're out, if you have people there that don't want to be there and you're handling high-powered weapons and explosives and different things and sitting in armoured vehicles, shooting live fire, I'm not sure I'd want people in there that were really unpleased about being there. So I'm not sure.
Forced to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. You get sloppy soldiers anyway. I had somebody do a negligent discharge into my back.
Right.
Sorry, but I was wearing body armor and it was a blank round, so it was just high pressure gunpowder that hit me, but it was nothing. But I remember the corporal getting hold of him and giving him a good beating for it, and me thinking, Jesus Christ, if that was real, he'd have killed me.
Yeah, no, I remember being drummed into you, always about. We got told a story actually by one of our sergeants that he'd been in Vietnam, and he was talking about. It wasn't in Vietnam, but he had been there, and he was explaining at one of his things he'd been over there, climbing through a fence and someone climbing through, and that's why they're so strict on keeping your fingers away, your trigger finger away and that stuff, because climbing through and had shot his friend, in the back, and that fella died. So it was, and it was just, drills home that it's important to be careful how you handle
happens though, doesn't
firearms.
it? Happens, especially with the Americans. They're good at the old blue and blues, the Yanks.
So I read,
So I could tell you a few stories about them. That's an interesting life you've had, from cowboying to rodeos to now politics. And what's the direction with Rod Caddies, and how are you jumping around all these different ventures?
Yeah, well, I guess just your life changes and you take different directions, you mature and you find different things about yourself, and especially when you're prepared to open up your mind and look at new things in life. I mean, I grew up down south on a farm, being pretty secluded.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, I guess, out where we were. I had a stepfather, so that's partly what's brought me to politics as well, in all the family. The mic's cutting out a bit there. So I had a mum with 7 kids as a single mother for, off and on through my life in my early times, and
7 kids.
Yeah, 7 kids with a single mum. So it really, it weighs on me now when I'm making decisions, thinking about all the single mums out there and people that struggle as parents, because parenting's hard. I've got 3 children, and for any parent out there that even has one child, they know how hard it is to look after children. But to be a single parent, whether it be single mother, single father, it's a really tough job. So for my mum, I believe she was a loving woman, and I love her to death. So she's not with us now, but the woman was amazing. So it just really. So I ended up going in the direction of doing some training and ended up in child protection, working for child protection.
Oh, right, yep.
And I was in and out of homes a bit as a younger kid, in government care, due to, obviously with the 7 kids, and like I said, it's really hard, and so I ended up having to go into care a bit sometimes. So I went into child protection and ended up working there 15 years, working in the Department for Child Protection, because I had a passion to help, the young people.
You'd have to have a passion to do something like that. I think there's a couple of people I've met that have done that, and I take my hat off to them, because I think it could be a traumatic job. You see some things.
Definitely seen a lot in my time in that 15 years. The average lifespan on the job, they say, is 3 or 4 years, and I was there 15. So, it's
a commitment.
Yeah, like I said, I think what you said, is you have to have a passion for it if you're going to last a long time in that environment. I had kids spit in my face, and like one young guy spat in my face 12 or 13 times in one day. So, and one of the times it landed in my mouth. So nice. you can sort of visualise how disturbing that was psychologically as well as physically and everything. So, I think it's a really challenging environment to be in, working in child protection, but there's a lot of traumatised young people out there that need help, and if I didn't stay, who would? So, and was my position on that.
The youth is one of the most important things, right? They're going to be the future of this country. What was it that you saw that was the most traumatic aspect of those kids' lives? Was there one thing that came up more than anything?
I think it's the broken families. I think, like I said, the environment family environment is very important to young people's developments in how they develop psychologically. So I think there's a lot of breakdown with outside pressures, whether it be mortgages or whatever they be. There's a lot of separations happening, and I think there's a lot of contributing factors to that. But I think was the biggest contributing factor in what I've seen. Most young people in care came from broken families. So that.
But there could be two types of broken family. Right? A broken family in the essence of mum and dad got divorced, which I came from. I think 2.5, my parents got divorced. And it was never an issue really for me. It got to the age, obviously, where you ask what's going on and you're inquisitive because you see other people's mummy and daddy living together. But I was in a very fortunate position where my parents didn't use me as a bit of bait to bait each other in any stretch. If I wanted to go to my father, I could go to my father, whether it be a Monday or a Wednesday or a Friday, and he'd come get me, happy to take me. My mum would let me go and so forth. And I was very fortunate. But I see a lot of cases these days, and it's also put out publicly on Facebook when people do it, but they use their kids as a weapon or a tool against a partner. And I think that's where family breakdowns can become dangerous and detrimental to the kids because they're denied the father figure. I say I'll go to father figure because it's usually the mother that gets the custody. Historically,
yes. The percentages sort of are in that direction, and there's many different issues. And like we've got a family law and child support forum coming up in Mandurah on this Monday on the 12th.
Just go a bit closer to the mic.
Is it that what it is? Sorry. Oops.
Or just bring it to you, either one.
Yeah. So it's a major problem. I lost my train of thought there.
Mandurah Forum, you've got a...
and that's why we're having this. There's so many issues within the family law system, whether it be child support or family law, because the new rules and that have come in over years of child support and are very unfair, whether it be to the mother or father, depending on who has custody. But traditionally, like we said, it had been going to the mother a lot. And I think that's caused a lot of issues, domestic violence, restraining orders, things like that have had, detrimental effects on the family. So when we talk about, and mine was very similar to yours, my breakup, I'm divorced from my first wife and I've got 2 children to my first wife, but we have a very good relationship and I can have my children whenever I want. And it was a struggle, even so for someone like me that didn't have anywhere near the trying situations of a parent that is being alienated from seeing their children. I think the psychological stress and anxiety of not having access to your children, whether you're man or female, it doesn't matter. And I think that's more common these days because of tools that are available with domestic violence orders and things like that being used as weapons against the, which like I don't want to harp because we don't want to be singling out men or women, but statistically it is happening, it has happened a lot more to men. So that is a bigger issue there.
Well, there's a big issue at the minute with men's health, men's mental health that goes around. And I've had a few people on the podcast that have discussed it, and there's so many different reasons for it as to why people get depressed or unhappy. But I can see with the struggles of life, a breakdown of a relationship, and then your kids are taken away from you, and then you're denied access through some crazy...
Yeah.
I haven't got children, so I don't get that emotional attachment to it, but I've seen people go through it, and it's bad enough. I've seen guys go to Iraq and leave his little daughter behind and didn't see her for 6 months. Different scenario, but the heartbreak that caused him when I served with him for that time, I still remember it now. And to think that somebody could take your kids and your relationship is broken down, that's sad enough. Now I can't see my kids. It's like men go to extreme places when that happens, and suicide becomes very common. I don't know. To me, it's just a very sad scenario.
Well, I hope I got the figures right, but from what with this family law forum, that we've had some figures that we've been researching that, and they contribute. There's a bit of research to say that you contribute 3 male suicides a day, based on coming from family issues.
Yeah, I think in Australia, sorry to interrupt you there, I think it's 5.9 men, as men alone, a day are committing suicide in Australia.
Yes, and I think 3 of them, they're contributing to family breakdown.
So that's over 50% to that. So that's
and 1 woman a week being murdered, they're saying contributed to family breakdown.
Really?
Yeah, that's some sort of statistics that have been coming up. So that just shows you the problems, that why we need to be fixing this whole holistic problem of family law, child support, that whole issue there.
The knock-on effect is
Yes.
catastrophic, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, and it's not, you have these people committing suicide and then you're left with a whole heap of heartbroken people or damaged, there's other damage caused to other, members of the family from that loss. So it's not even just them taking their life or the problems in that family, it's wide-ranging, it reaches so many people.
It's an interesting topic. It's a deep one when you get into it.
Yeah, very deep.
This is a question that I was going to have for you. Of all this fulfilling life of doing what you've done and the fun that goes with it, right? Yeah. Of the bull riding and working out on your, what do they call it?
On the station.
On the stations. And what made you want to get into politics? Because it's like a game that you can't win, in essence. So
that's a good.
It's another. It is, and I've never known a politician to win. They might win an election, but if they win, they're soon criticised, and soon the media turn on them, and it happens again and again, and it's just a vicious circle. It's just like a game that can't be won. So, what made you think this is going to be a good idea? I was going to get into this.
Well, I guess you got to look at some things in life, like working in child protection. It's a hard slog, and do we ever really win there? I'm not sure, because we don't see a lot of the outcomes of the work I used to put into them young people. And I think politics is probably a little bit different. You do see some of the work you put in coming to fruition. So when you say win, depends on what your class of a win is. My win is serving the people that, I'm not elected yet, but as a politician, if I was to be elected as a member of parliament, even now as a working in a member of parliament's office, my job is to look at every bit of legislation and try to contribute in a positive way and make sure the best outcomes are for the people of WA. So that's a win to me. If I can research enough, and if we can drum up enough support to get certain legislation through or stop certain legislation, then really that's a win. So I guess you can have little wins and big wins, and that's, for me, is the reward enough, knowing that I'm contributing positively to this world. It's something my mum always used to say to me: if you're not going to contribute positively to the world, then no use contributing at all. So and that's my motto in life.
Nice,
it's in politics. That's why I've got into it. I believe my passion for young people and for helping the community is very strong. So and that rolls into politics. I want to do everything I can. I've got a real heart for regional WA. I think regional WA is hurting badly. Very city-centric focused politicians are these days, because that's where a lot of the votes are. But, there's a lot of people hurting, as are in the cities, but in the regional areas of Australia, but specifically WA, because that's where we are. There's just, the employment or, the access to things that you would normally have access to into the city you don't have in the regional areas and things like that. So I really have a passion to change that, and that's why I ran in the Ag region in the last state election. Yep. And I'll be looking at doing the same in the next state election.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And when you looked at it and you said, right, I want to get involved in this, you looked at all the parties, or were you already, and then said One Nation, or were you already on board with One Nation and liking the way they were going?
Well, it's funny because I guess I rolled into it in a strange way, into politics. I didn't have a passion for politics at all. I probably am like most other Australians that gone, watch the TV and it's just another politician speaking, and so that for me was not really, like, I didn't have this focus of getting into politics. It wasn't a thing where I'm going to get into politics. So I wasn't looking at parties or whatever. However, what I was looking at is what I wasn't happy within politics when I seen different outcomes that were happening. I really didn't know a real lot about what different parties were offering anyway. I wasn't a political minded person. It wasn't something I had a passion for. Like most people, you probably think, oh, who's going to be making sure they look after? If you're a truck driver or a policeman, or you'd be at election time, you go, who's going to make the best decisions for my income?
Yeah, the majority of people will look at the small picture and say, who's affecting me and what my life does. But
yes,
I think there's such a small, not to interrupt you there, but we'll get back onto that. But from me, who's not into politics in a great way, I'll flick through something that'll catch my eye. But we're fed so much crap. Some of it is from the politicians, and some of it is from the media. So I don't always believe. I believe that 90% of what I'm watching is crap, because either the media have twisted it and changed it to suit if they're going left or right, and I don't 100% trust what the politician would be saying, because they can say one thing, take with one hand, give with another hand, take with one, give with another, and they kind of feed a little bit over here, keep them happy for a second, and cover this up, and slip this one in somewhere, and vote for me, and I'm going to do great things. All this comes out right when they're going to do an election. They'll promise the world.
Yes.
And then you don't see anything, but then you hear that the bloody Prime Minister's given himself a 200 grand pay rise. And you're like, well, you didn't mention that when we were going to vote for you, did you?
Yeah, probably.
So you lose confidence in scenarios like that, I think.
Yeah, and I guess, and I would never defend everything about politics and politicians, although, as you said, media, you can't always rely on what's being sort of pushed in the media. And I'm not sure, when that rhetoric of, politicians give themselves a big pay rise and all that, there is certain little bits and pieces like that they do. There are things that they slip through and I would never approve of. But I think it's taken to the extreme of sometimes through the media and that, because of it's got political gain for someone. So depending on which way, like you said, the media are swaying towards.
Yeah, you can't trust the media either, see?
Yeah. For me, I see getting into politics is a bit different. I won't be looking at whether I'm going to get elected at the next election. So I think from what I've learned, that's actually not most, so I won't say that. It was told to me at the beginning by a couple of members of parliament, said, as soon as you're elected, your job is basically looking at ways to get elected, how you're going to get elected at the next election. And I sort of felt, well, that's not me. My way of getting elected at the next election, and if I don't, all well and good, what I do will be based on my moral character and what I believe right for the people of Western Australia. If it turns out I don't get re-elected for the choices I make, well, at least I'll have known I made the choices believing that they were in the best interests of the people. So whether people twist and turn and make me look, bad, that can be done. But I think I never want to be one of them people that is striving to be re-elected as my goal. My goal will be to succeed in bringing about positive change in politics. So, and I think that's probably what's missing in politics, that big party politics is always about winning government.
Yep. And
winning government means winning seats, which means your aim the moment you get elected as a major party is to make sure you win that seat back. Whereas as a minor party, as a smaller party, like Pauline Hanson's One Nation, our drive, I know mine is, and speaking to the members of parliament that are in, is more about doing your job, serving the people, and hoping that that's enough, that you fighting for the right thing will be enough to convince people that you are the right person to have there representing them next time. So.
Yeah. It amazes me that they've still got such a pull in the media, given that we've got the Facebooks, the Instagrams. There's ways of people coming out and actually saying things and correcting things. Like you could go live on Facebook like you did the other night, and you gave a beautiful speech on family and the importance of keeping it together and trying. And I enjoyed watching that. That ability is there for everyone now. It's hard to think that they could get away with manipulating and lying and editing out conversations. Or somebody will give a speech and they'll edit out certain parts and make it look at Donald Trump. They do it to him all the time, right? But the fight back is there. You can go on YouTube and you can actually watch the actual speech, and it's nothing like what the media are portraying it to be. Yes. And there's no consequence to them doing this.
No, and that's probably, I guess I can sort of, for an analogy to me, it's like health food, and when people don't look into things deep enough, and we get taught as children. A lot of people get taught as children. Oh, you know, you're sick, go to the doctor. You know, you've got a cold, flu, go, and they give you antibiotics. But I think it's like when you get into health food products is we haven't been conditioned to investigate other ways. This is what you're told, so this is the way you go. And I think it's the same with media a bit. People are a bit lazy in politics in that it doesn't interest them enough, so that what they see on media, they go, oh, and they accept that as being real. Whereas I was like that. I was, you know, I'm not saying I'm not putting myself up on some pedestal that I didn't do it. I think we all do it, I've changed. I've opened my eyes, and politics now to me, it's funny for me to say this, but I enjoy it. I enjoy looking at every part of it, because what I know by investigating everything about politics is going to make my future better. It's going to make my children's future better, and their children, and so on. So it's a passion for me to help people in life. So for me to do that, I need to investigate more, and that's what's the exciting part for me in politics. And that's what I'm saying about with the health food products. If people look more into what you can do in health foods, they'll be surprised. There's so many things that sit lying under, which we've ended up being reliant on you know, pharmaceuticals, that it's just the easy way to go now. It's the lazy way in a sense, because our parents, not meaningful in a negative way, it's just how society has slowly told us, you know, they go give you something that blocks you up, and then you're blocked up, so you get something to unblock you. And
do you think we're kind of suppressed to still go out and think and act for yourselves too much? We kind of just sit in this zombified world and just go through. So I've got a problem with my stomach. I'll go to the... I'll give you an example. My housemate went to the doctor the other week, not to take the piss out of him here, but every time I cough, my head hurts. And it's like he'd just been ill with the flu. And we're too quick to run off to somewhere, take a pill for that.
Yes.
I want to lose weight, I'll take a pill for that. My head hurts, I'll take a pill for that.
And society's
we're just
going
zombified into doing this. And when it comes to something more complex like politics, we just zombify down that way. Everyone's going to vote for the Reds or the Blues. So, I like Reds, my favourite colour, we'll go for that.
Yeah, and I don't want to come back to politics too much again, but yeah, it's like that with people voting. When I spoke to so many people, they're like, they really don't know what they're voting for. I'm voting for them because, you know, but it's... in the old days, from what I believe, they were like statesmen. They were people from the community that got into politics. So the way you got into politics was you were someone that was contributing massively to the community. And so you might have been a businessman or whatever, and you were doing a lot in the community. So you'd be well known, and that's what helped you get elected. So, but you would be someone who wanted to help the community, and you went into politics to do that. And it's all changed now. So people would then look at you. For starters, they would already know you through the community. You would already be sort of well known in the community, and that's how you had a bit of a name. But then back before, people would look at you as an individual, and they would sort of investigate a bit more about you. But I think now people go, oh, I'm voting Labor, I'm voting Liberal. And as you said, there's a lot of lip service about big promises made at election time. But if you really look at what they succeeded in from them promises, are they succeeding? Are they following through on their commitments? And I think that's what people need to look a bit more at their local member they're voting for. What is his moral character? What is he going to do for you? What is his, what did he do in the last, if he was elected the last 4 years, have a look at his history, look what he did for you in the last 4 years. But people don't do that. I ran in a by-election last year, and it was like they didn't even know who the local member was. They didn't know the guy had been kicked out of Parliament for wearing fake medals, fake
military medals.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he basically went out of Parliament, and I think faced police medals as well, because he'd been in the police force, but he said he served overseas. But I don't want to get into attacking that individual, but people didn't know that they didn't even know it was Liberal or Labor that was their member of Parliament. They didn't know the member's name, and they didn't know they'd been kicked out, and that they said, "Oh, is there election?" But that showed me how much people were sort of distanced from understanding. They didn't Like, so they surely didn't look at who he was to start with.
Yeah.
If they didn't know who he was now, what was he doing in the community or for them areas if no one even knew who he was? So,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Somebody who wears fake military medals says a lot about their character, doesn't it?
yeah.
I bet you they'd have been quick to say, one nation, I bet they're bloody racists. The amount of times I've heard that, and what I've listened to, and what I might say on here is in no way, shape or form related to One Nation, or it's not your views or One Nation's views or anything. So if I say something that's a little bit untoward, that's on me. Have a go at me, not you. But I've heard people say that for a long time. And I looked into it and listened to some of the speeches, and I don't believe that you guys are. I think we live in a world where anything that's got the word "ist" on the end of it is thrown around now like a baseball. You're a racist, you're a prejudiced, you can't say this. But if you say something about any other race, you immediately become racist. It's not the case. I like to say that sometimes I like to think more of a realist if you're going to put an "ist" on the end of it, rather than a racist. That would be a better one.
I don't mind that being titled a realist. Yeah. No, I got that racist tag thrown at me, right at the beginning, and it probably hurt a little at the start. Like to me now that I just listen to that and go, yeah, whatever. I know what I am. I know I'm far from a racist, so it doesn't really. I've got that many great Aboriginal friends. I've got my nephews and nieces and that are half Vietnamese. My brother was married to a Filipino. One of my best friends from Iran. There's so many things that I know I'm not a racist. So these days when people go, oh, you're with One Nation, you're a racist, and it really is just like a water off a duck's back these days, because I know what I'm driving and striving for, and I know what sort of person I am, and I guarantee I've challenged people before. I said, look, I've got, I don't know how many, a couple of thousand people on my Facebook page. I challenge you to pick anyone you like on there, and I'll let you talk to them here. I'll ring them.
But it doesn't necessarily have to come down to you as an individual. They could say it about the party, other things that the way things have been, like in the world that we live in. It's a very soft world at the minute, and you get something like Pauline Hanson goes into Parliament and wears a burqa or something like that, and then I think it's quite funny, but people would find it offensive and probably the wrong way to go about putting a point across, but it's not racist.
Yeah,
it's but people will quickly jump onto it and say it is. It's not saying it's the right way to do it at all, but
it doesn't matter.
Racist.
And even if you go away from the racism thing and you go to anything in life, now you can't, when you used to say to your mate, I don't know the words. I don't want to even swear in that, but you used to, a term of endearment. Blokes used to call their mates, well, bastards or whatever. Like you'd say something, but these days, there's things like now that if someone else takes offence to you saying something to your friend, even if they take offence, then it sort of starts to be thrown at you as it's a real issue. You can offend other people now by what you're saying to someone else.
But what is being offended?
Well, yeah, that's a good question.
It's nothing. It's nothing. And there's just this big fanny dance about it. There's nothing in being offended. If someone says something you don't like, so what?
Yeah.
They're doing something. What did I read the other day? That they're trying to sue Steve Irwin's kid. Is it Robert Irwin?
Yes, yep.
Because he's handling an animal on TV and it's not best for the welfare of the animals. They're offended by this animal's... They're offended for this animal.
Yes.
You get your head around that for a second. It's like you don't like the idea of that animal being handled on TV, but it's probably been rescued. His life's been saved somewhere down the line, and he's shown out there. People support. People pay money to keep these things, to keep that charity going. But these people stroked that animal, and that animal doesn't want to be stroked. It's I'm offended for that animal. Hear themselves. Just people need to sit back sometimes and hear what they're saying. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's sad with all these people that are doing this sort of. Over exaggerating different situations, because it comes back on people it shouldn't. Like, say, the vegetarians. If you want to be a vegetarian, that's great. To be honest, I could live on vegetarians. I like my meat, don't get me wrong, but I couldn't live just on meat, but I could live on a vegetarian diet. However, that doesn't mean I want to be a vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
Though then you get these vegetarians and vegans and that going out doing extremist things.
There's another ist then, see? They become another ist, don't they? An extremist. Because they go that one level too far.
Very shockingly. And all they're doing is turning a lot of people off and putting a negative connotation onto to legitimate vegetarians and vegans who choose to be, vegan or vegetarian.
And some of the vegans, I'll say some, are the worst for it, because you have to identify, and this whole thing coming out now, you have to identify as something these days, but they identify as a vegan.
I heard one vegan attacking another the other day because they didn't class one thing. They were attacking, you can't be a vegan because we don't do that. And they were arguing over what's vegan, and I thought, wow, they're attacking one another now.
Is that much bullshit involved? They're just imploding. That's all they're going to do. Yeah. But I think them turning up at farms and stealing livestock and then being so extreme about the views that they have on animals, that they're actually doing more detriment to that animal, more stress to these animals than leaving them on the farm and letting it be. If they had a way that they went about business that was more respectful, that people could listen to them and would give them the time of day, they'd do better. You see them putting a stop to climate change in, was it Brisbane or was it Melbourne in the CBD?
In Brisbane, yeah.
Now, they're causing more pollution by holding up the traffic and having thousands of cars lined up, polluting the air in that one spot, instead of letting the cars just go through, trying to put a point across. But they're doing about it in the wrong way, because now they're just pissing the population off. Everyone's saying, oh, those bloody activists, they got us stuck today. I was late for work. I missed this meeting. I couldn't drop my kids off. I was late picking up my kid, whatever it might be. Yeah. They're just pissing people off. Those people are then not going to listen to a word they got to say when it comes down to something that is an important issue. But they're going about it totally the wrong way and discrediting themselves and the topic in some ways.
Yeah, no, I'm no climate skeptic, and but at the same time, we know climate's been changing, for many years. It's gone through. So yeah, it's been constantly changing, and you know what? I'm a bit of an environmentalist. I care for our environment of Australia. I want to make sure that what I leave behind on this planet is something pretty good for my children and their children, to come. So I'm no person that wants to go out trashing the country, but to over exaggerate things, to be extreme in anything, it's all about sustainability. And I think they're mixing the definition of sustainability up with what it should be. Sustainability is about making sure you do the best to replace. Like if you cut down a tree, that these people will fight from you cutting down a tree. But if you're going to cut down a tree, replace it with a tree. That's sustainability. It's not. I wouldn't be out there, but yet I want to see. I come from Manjimup, Pemberton, and the land of the big forests. Big carry trees and jarrah forests and stuff. Do I want all them cut down? No. Do I mind if some get cut down and be used for the house I live in? Perfectly fine, as long as they replace the tree they cut down, because that's sustainability.
Which can be easily done.
Easy. Replace a tree, because when you cut that one down, in 10 years, that'll be 10 years old and it'll just keep growing. And if you keep, and again, sustainability, if you can only cut this amount of trees down and replace it, they're only going to be this level before you need to cut them down again. Only cut that, so that's sustainability. And I think that's where we go wrong, is we should be concentrating on sustainability, not complete lock up the country from, you can't fish in there, you can't cut trees down, you can't do this. It's just madness. Yeah,
there's no question that we should be looking at better ways of moving away from fossil fuels. And when Mr. Tesla came up with his ideas, he was pretty quickly shut down years ago, wasn't he, by the elitists? And those ideas are coming back into play now, slowly but surely. But there's big scientists saying that massive change will come. We've got 12 years to do some good. Otherwise, things will be irreversible. But
they said that about many things. There's been people, so they work on modelling, and scientists work on models. So they model out something because they don't know what's going to happen in the future. They can only do models. And what they do is they create these models. But if you look at a lot of their models they've created in the past that have said them days have gone and passed, whether this was going to melt or the sea levels were going to rise to this point, and all them things haven't come to pass. So that was their modelling. And now that this is just a new, what was it called? It wasn't climate change. It was, there was the old, when it was too hot, too cold. We change. I can't think. It changes.
I don't know.
It's been changed a few times, but back in the past, the ozone layer was the big thing, and but I haven't heard the ozone layer mentioned now for many years. I don't know if you.
No, this is another one of those discrediting things, isn't it? Where things come and go. It'll be fashion to talk about that for a while, then we'll change it and we'll go down this road and we'll talk about this for a while. And now the oceans are rising because Ice is melting, but it's always melting. We've had ice ages before. I'm not saying that it's not. There's some element of truth. I don't know,
Yes,
but if it was that end of the world in 12 years kind of scenario, I do think that the world would sit up a lot more and take notice, and most world leaders would as well. But it's not, and we've had ice ages before. If you go back to Wales and go up the hills, the Preseli Mountains, there you'll see seashells and seaweed still kicking on from back in the day when the oceans were up there. It happens. This is how the world operates. So to see that oceans rising isn't such a scary thing. It happens in my eyes. I'm not no expert, but
well, one of the things I look at is that the crazy thing about these people that push all the climate change, and they're the same people that are big on immigration and saying bring in as many people as we like to Australia and that, but the urban sprawl is cutting down all the trees and forests, and when you look at the urban sprawl, how long have you came from the UK? How long have you been?
7 years.
So 7 years, you still would have seen some of that in the last 7 years in Perth. I mean, but you take Perth back 20, 30 years ago.
This was all bushland that we're living on now, yeah.
All bushland. So the urban sprawl and population, you're wiping out all this area that would have had animals, and the ecosystem has been destroyed by urban sprawl because of population growth. So yet these people push for higher immigration, saying, let's let them all into Australia. So what is it? Are you worried about climate change? Are you worried about, because you're talking about climate change, where you're knocking down all the forests and trees to have all this urban sprawl. So, it's a little bit
the same people that then say that you're racist for saying that people can't come into the country, isn't it?
So...
But as being an immigrant myself, I'm not remotely upset about anything that One Nation have said about immigration or anything that I've read. Coming from the UK, I've seen that country demise from letting the borders are just open. It's not the way to go, and it's not a case of being racist by saying that you can't do it. On a personal level, I don't believe that we're all we can all be integrated. It's all good to have multicultural. I enjoy that. If I walk down streets in Birmingham, London, I'll go back to Birmingham because it's actually happened. I've been chased out of streets for being white in predominantly Muslim areas. They'll have notice boards up. The police aren't welcome there. They want to police it themselves. And there's all sorts going on in there. You can only imagine. It's not a case of saying, oh, it's racist against Muslims or anything of the sort. It's not. It's real. It's happened. And the same thing would happen here. The exact same thing would happen here if you let it happen. It's okay being nice, saying these people's countries are in turmoil. Let so many of these refugees in. Now, I don't know whether that's a guilt on the higher up. They feel guilty about going into some of these countries and annihilating them and saying, oh, let's mask that. But saying, oh, come on, we'll help these people that are trying to get out. When ultimately, not saying but we're part of the problem of why we've gone in there and nailed them in the first place. And it's all over. Not get into that one too much, but I don't know. But to say that we'll just let them in, and watching what happened in Melbourne a couple of months ago, was it last year, was it Somalians were beating people up, robbing them down on down on the waterfront, the Sudanese, was it?
Sudanese maybe or something.
And we just let them in as refugees, and now they've come in and they've just taken that mentality, and this is just an overwhelming country for them. If they come from where they come from to come and see this, or come and see the UK, the flashy lights and the way it all is, you can come buy a beer on the side of the street, here's a bunch of money. They run riot. It's just not their world. You've taken them out of their habitat, put them in ours, and they just can't cope. Next thing you know, they're raping people, beating them up, robbing them on the side of the street in gangs and crews. And now that's what you get. That's what happens. We're not all compatible.
I mean, and I think some of the messages got lost in, even when I talk about immigration, and there are issues like you're talking about, that's something that obviously has to be looked at. And I always use the analogy, if a man comes out of a pub, drives around the corner and crashes on the corner every week at a pub in an area, say, you wouldn't say, oh, we've got an issue with someone crashing on the corner every week, would you? You'd say you'd have an issue with men crashing their cars on the corner leaving the pub. Had it been men, women, everyone, you'd sort of go, we have an issue. But I think that's where the problem in society is. You can't point anything out now without being labelled, without being attacked. So whether it be Islam or whether it be, whatever it may be, like you get attacked for having an opinion, you get attacked for open debate. So I believe everything should be openly debated, but in a respectful manner. Like we should discuss it. And then you debate something in life, and that's what our political system's based on. It's all based on debate and democracy, and the most votes win. So if you can convince a group of people about something, in a debate, they choose and going, well, who had the most viable argument? Who is right here? See, so I think that when you're talking about whether it be the Sudanese or the Islamic thing, it's you pick out things in society and you debate them, and if there's an issue in a direct, they did it with the churches when there was the pedophilia and different things. They had a royal commission and they said there's a problem within the churches that children are being abused. So they did a royal commission. So there was no problem with that. Why do we? Well,
the thing is with the church thing as well. In my eyes, if it was puppies being abused, there'd have been more uproar. To me, there wasn't enough being said about that. It was all a bit under the carpet, and still nobody really wants to talk about it. And if it was puppies getting beaten up and tortured, the church have got boxes of puppies turning up and they're torturing them and putting them all down, there would be uproar. Save the puppies, not the kids. Nobody gives a shit about the kids. I
think it's a lot of politics comes into play and everything, obviously, and it's like a political football, and it's gaining votes. It's about it's a fluid motion of going wherever they get votes, I think, a bit. And when we talk about like with the Greens and Labor and the parties, Labor rely on Greens votes. So there's big noise comes from the Green side of politics about these social issues and whether it be immigration or whatever. But that's part of the problem when they're curtailing to people because they need them for something. So they have to allow them to have something. And for me, immigration is more than who you let in. I think we need to be, looking at that. That's a big part of it. And that's one little part. As we discussed when we first got on, driving down here, it took me over an hour and a half to get down here, what should have taken maybe 40 minutes, surely, because it was bumper-to-bumper traffic on a 2-lane freeway, as they called it. It certainly wasn't free. It was, it's...
I feel your pain there.
And we talk about mental health and that being a major problem in these places. Well, that's enough to give any bloke, any person, a mental breakdown. The anxiety and stress that caused me driving in that traffic was immense. It was like going, wow, how can anyone do this every day? They say heart attacks are massively caused from stress. Well, no wonder lots of people having heart attacks having to drive.
They need another hard shoulder as a lane for heart attacks.
And the immigration, that's a big part of it. You continue to bring more and more people and not keep up with infrastructure, whether it be roads, hospitals, schools. I mean, our hospitals, they're talking about ramping up, like ambulances ramp up, and you've got big waiting queues for ambulances to get into the hospital and that sitting there. You've got people in corridors sitting on beds. You can't get specialist appointments. I had one person telling me they moved from Armidale to Byford and they couldn't get kids in the school. It's chock-a-block full, so they had to drive the kids to Armidale every morning to school. Things like that. The schools are full, the hospitals are full, the roads are full, overflowing. It's, who wants to drive an hour and a half to get, a little distance, So these are the issues with immigration. It's not just about who you let in; it's about can we keep up, and we just can't. We're not. The government haven't planned far enough ahead to build to cope.
Just let the floodgates open.
Oh well, they say we're going to have this many people in Perth by this time, yet the infrastructure they've built won't cope with that amount of people. So, is that poor planning, or is that like? They know, you know how many people you're planning on having, yet the infrastructure you're planning on doesn't sustain that.
So what would your answer to this be? Well, for immigration, I mean.
Well, federally...
Not build a wall, obviously.
No, well, federally we've called on it. We're not... As a party, Pauline Hanson says it all the time. At the moment it's like 270,000 people a year or something coming into Australia.
That's a large percentage of the population.
Yeah, they dropped it down, and I think it was 180,000. I'm trying to think. I'm not. I don't want to quote numbers too much because I haven't really looked at it. It's a federal thing, but I know, the government talked about dropping it from 190 down to 160,000 net migration, I think they call it.
And are they keeping them as skilled workers only, or is that anyone that can come in? Does that include holiday visas, travel visas?
Oh no, it doesn't include. There's 500,000 students in Australia. That's permanent migration. I think that's allowing 160,000 permanent migrants to migrate here. So, like I said, I don't want to quote specifically because I'm not claiming to be.
If you think of that, then, and they're letting in, say 16 to 9, just hypothetically, 16 to 19-year-olds into study at that level.
Yeah, so it's 500,000.
And then you've got the youth coming through, where the schools are full already. That's going to congest. Bottleneck at the top end, then, isn't it?
And employment issues.
Am I right?
Well, you mean, it's good if the younger people, because if you let in the older people, then they get old and you're having to support them.
No. I mean, in the educational system now. So if you've let these people into study from hypothetically 16 to 19 college level, the schools are still coming through, the numbers, the schools are full, you're saying?
Yes.
So therefore, the colleges aren't just full of Australians, then they're going to be too full of immigration, because there's that many hundreds of thousands, you're saying, coming in to study.
Yes.
Then
universities,
if you then throw the general population on top of that as well at that level, that's a substantial number.
Well, they've increased, and this year again, I think they increased because it's all money. When you talk about students studying here, that brings in money to the country. So it's economics. It's not based on what's good for the country apart from the financial side. So we need to be looking at other, all our manufacturing's gone offshore. Everything that creates money, now we're bought out by multinationals owning a lot of money leaves the country, whether it be Uber or Chevron, all these different, whatever it is, a lot of money leaves the country. So immigration is what they rely on to create money, because everyone that comes into the country, they work on a certain amount of dollar value. And of course, the globalist type companies and all that love that, because every person that's here has to buy a phone, clothes, shoes, all these things. So it's sort of, but when you're relying on that, what happens eventually? How full do you get before you say you can't continue to bring in, people? Your infrastructure just can't. Look at our water. We've done no planning for water into the future, and it's crazy. They restrict your water, and over East it's worse than we've got it here. You get restricted for little periods of time. So we're running out of water. We continue to bring in loads and loads of people, but we're having to build desal plants and stressing about the rivers over East. Look at the big controversy over the Murray-Darling River. It's drying up downstream, and it's just really crazy. It's ludicrous, and so that's the immigration problem. Like I said, if you looked, it's something you should have a look at, the immigration numbers into Australia, because that 160,000 I think is permanent migrancy. But like I said, 500,000 students in Australia, and you get your holiday visas, your work, holiday work visas, and so it's just it's crazy, and that's more my concern about the immigration. Yes, this is going to bubble up with the type of immigration you're having coming in, the issues we're having, whether it be the Sudanese, Islam, whatever you want to debate about, but the numbers of immigration, which is eventually will have to.
That's an interesting way of describing it, what you just said. I hadn't actually thought of it in depth that way. I usually get blanketed by the fact that, the immigration, you can't let these people in. It's always the Muslims and the Islams. And it is, but, and they're not all bad. It's not a case of they're all bad, but it only takes 4 people to bring a country down.
Yeah,
a whole country down. You only got to look at what happened in London with the underground bombings. It was like 6 people involved. But 6 people out of the millions is all it takes. So you got to be incredibly careful, especially with the hate speech that's publicly put out there now by these imams, and nothing's done about it because it's seen as racist if you do something about it. They get kicked out the country, but then people protest. Let them back in again. They deserve a chance to be. These people don't understand. They haven't seen what they're capable of doing.
I'm one of them people. I love this country. I'm so, I love this country with a passion, and I would love to say, look, let's just open the floodgates and let everyone come here. But I know that's not sustainable. So again, I come back to the word sustainable. I'm in a travel group, couch surfing, And I hosted probably 500 people at my place from all over the world. I love people from everywhere. I've had people from Iran, Afghanistan, France, Spain, everywhere you could imagine. I've had people, Israel. I've had people staying from all over China. I've had Muslims. I've had people from all over the world stay with me, But yeah, it's crazy to think you can just keep opening them floodgates to allow people if you don't think sustainability. And that's what it's about. So,
So on other, we'll jump off that
yes,
subject.
It's a long.
At Australia, sounds like my dog wants to be on the podcast here, does it? It seems to be quite slow in doing things compared to everywhere else. So you look at the internet, for example, as a basic example, we're always a long way behind, right? And I look at what goes on in the UK or America or anywhere across Europe, and it's always in place. And Australia seems to be dragging their heels, faffing around, not jumping on board of things. Now I look at I'm not making myself clear here, but if I look at any form of politics, I sometimes look at it and I think, why can't you look at what's working for them and what that country have done to benefit them in an area of, let's say, drug abuse. That's quite huge here in Australia, and in Perth there's a lot of ice and everything kicking around.
Yes.
And it's massively frowned upon. People get locked up for having it, and so on and so forth. And if you look at every country around the world, it's the same principle, right? Actually, if you go to Bali or Thailand, they'll kill you for it.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think it was Norway, maybe Norway, Sweden, one of the two, maybe. And they put something in place that if you were addicted, you can go to like the safe house sort of thing.
Decriminalised.
Yeah, they decriminalised it.
They made it a health problem rather than a criminal problem.
Bang, there you go. And they gave it to them as a medicine, in essence, and found that they didn't want to be on it, but they got to the root cause of why they were on it and why they didn't feel like they belonged, and they hit those reasons. Nobody just decides, I'm going to take ice because my life is great. People take these drugs because they're suppressing pain, they're suppressing life. Life is just too much for them. They want to get out, and that's their out. So they gave it to them, and they could come back and have more, but they had to do it at the safe house, and then they could go off about their business. They couldn't take it away to sell.
Well, it takes the criminal element out of it too. They're not robbing people's houses, and it's not expensive, because when you bring criminals into it, make something expensive.
Yes,
that's what happens.
And a huge percentage of them got off it because they were shown a different way.
Yes.
And I look at things like that, and I think that's beautiful that somebody's come up with that and implemented it, and really must have had to step outside of themselves and faced a lot of adversity to get that over the line, and they've done it, and it's worked. Why can't people in charge look at other things? That's just an example. Things that work in other countries, and say, let's implement them here. Another one for you would be CBD and medicinal cannabis
oil. Yeah.
Now, you only got to look at Holland if you want to go back for a long time and see what the long-term.
I'm glad you brought this one up, because it's something I've been working on politically for a while now.
If you look at Holland and people say, oh, long-term effects of smoking marijuana, we don't know yet. Just go to Holland. They've been doing it legally for years, right? Everyone's fine. Everyone's pretty chilled out. Everyone turns up for work every day. It's all good to go. America, they're doing the same thing. They've jumped on board, and they're wiping out their national debt through tax of this.
Well, I think Israel's the leading body on it. They've so far advanced on studying the effects and what medicinal cannabis and all that. They're really far ahead. So, I mean, it's legal in Australia now. It's legal.
To what extent, though? Because if you go to the UK, I can walk into what would be a Woolworths or a Coles, and I can buy it.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
So to me, that's legal. At the minute, it's not legal.
Yeah, no, it's legal in the sense it's not criminal, and you have to be prescribed by a doctor, and but that's the issue that we're fighting in WA. It's the accessibility of it takes months to get hold of, and then on top of that, because it's new for starters, that contributes, but it's expensive. So
it's incredibly
every day,
expensive,
you can't access it, because whether it's accessible because it's legal, but if it costs you like $500 a week to use it, then it's not really accessible, is it? So there's some of the problems, and same as you can't you can't be prescribed by a GP. You have to go to a GP in Perth. So say you had really bad pain and you were you're suffering for something that meets the criteria, but you'd have to go, firstly, you have to find a GP that will recommend you to start with, because a lot of GPs still are a bit, no one wants to recommend it because it's new to Australia, really. It's like coming back from years back. So you have to get a GP that recommends you to go to a specialist. Then you go to the specialist who has to say, yep, you're suitable, and you get it. Then you go back to your GP who has to do all the paperwork to send to the federal guys over east. Then it has to go through the federal approval system. Then it comes back to WA, and then it has we've got a committee, a panel of 12 experts that then have to look at the case and then decide if this is suitable, and then it goes back. And
it's
then,
ridiculous.
Yeah. So we've been arguing, what do you need these 12 extra people again after it's gone through a GP, a specialist who's prescribed it for you? It's gone through the approvals in the federal sense.
To me, it screams that people don't know what they're doing, because
I think it's been deliberately made hard, because I know, like the AMA, I think we're against it, and the medical profession. There was a lot of people sort of fighting against it. And when you're talking pharmaceuticals, it's a huge industry.
Yep. Well, that's another corrupt industry for you.
Well, there's lots of conspiracy theories, but there's also a lot of truth in when you're talking big money in any industry. There's a lot of power behind money. So, I mean, we've got euthanasia, voluntary assisted dying at the moment in Parliament.
Yep,
that's a big one. As you would have seen on the news, it's the flavour of the month at the moment for media. So you've got the medical practitioners, the AMA, saying they're against it, and so you're always fighting someone, and that's where these issues come about. Whereas, maybe it's been more liberal, but it's political again. A lot of the time it's political. One side will...
It just doesn't seem very... There seems to be a lot of common sense missing. There's a lot of these pharmaceutical products that are Oxycontin-based. You've got soldiers out in Afghanistan guarding poppy fields, which the Taliban are trying to burn down because they have their beliefs about it. Yep. And there's us guys out there claiming to be fighting wars. And I know people are out there right now, and all they're doing is guarding the poppy fields. The poppy fields that get harvested, they get sent across to America. Big pharmaceutical companies come along and they make their pharmaceutical products. People become addicted to them. You get something like a CBD, which has helped so many people, and nobody's found any real side effects that are anywhere on the level of what a lot of other... You take too many bloody Nurofen, you're going to get stomach ulcers and stuff like this. Nothing has hit any level at all that's done anything like that can match what a pharmaceutical company side effects could give to you, and yet we're still so slow to roll it out.
You could eat a truckload of it, and it's still...
And you won't overdose on it. Nothing will happen.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is we need to make sure, but not enough people... I guess, again, it takes anything to get through and become more accessible and viable, and for in politics, for it to make it legal, you need a heap of people to stand up and make a noise. So if everyone out in WA here was making a big noise saying we want medicinal cannabis oil, it's going to help so many people. If you had enough people demanding it, that legislation would be through in a day.
They're creating Facebook groups for it, and Facebook are reporting them and having them shut down.
I think the legitimate ones are going okay. The ones because there's people that maybe they're getting shut down, because I'm friends with quite a few of them now because I've been working on it for the last couple of years. And that's why I know we asked many questions in Parliament, and that's how I know about the panel in place, because we want to eliminate that. And one of the people I know has a young girl that's got epilepsy and really badly, and I'm trying to think, but that's her major thing. But she was having like 40 seizures a day. They were flying to America to use it because they would go and stay over there for weeks on end, because it was cheaper for them to fly over there. It was illegal here to start with, so they were having to access it illegally here for their daughter, because they weren't going to, their daughter would just about die, they had to be up all night. They'd have to take shifts staying awake because she'd be having so many seizures through the night.
Yeah.
And man, imagine trying to live a life like that. Just having a child and looking after them is hard enough, but to have one that's seizing all night. Mm-hmm. So they're spending endless amounts of money and time in the US. So now at least it's legal here, but still it's very expensive. So, I think we just need this is what this type of thing does is great. I hope many people see what we talk about, and it sort of filters out to as many people as possible, because we need people to jump on board and have a look and understand and say, yeah, this isn't like you're getting high. This isn't something you're getting and going, And I'm not saying I'm probably in the no camp for legalising cannabis as such because of my own reasons. However, I'm not against it, as in I don't think it's a bad, not because of thinking it's an awful drug or anything, but just for specific reasons.
It's not a drug if it's not man-made, is it? And
yeah,
look, my experience with a bit of cannabis was I was working out in Holland, and it's legal. And the boss actually turned up, and he knew that the guy I was working with liked to smoke it. So he bought him a bag when he turned up, and he put a pack of beers in the fridge for me. I had a go of it with him, and I was fine. Up for work the next day, drank the beers another night. I got up for work, blew zeros, felt like shit. I'd had the beer, and the beer's a depressant, and it dehydrated me, stuffed me up. So I started smoking this marijuana with him in the evenings, and I was up for work the next day, happy, go lucky, no side effects, no hangover off it. And I was like, well, that's 10 times better than drinking alcohol. Alcohol can bug you up for 2 or 3 days after you've had a couple of drinks, and marijuana wouldn't. If I had a smoke on a Friday, I could turn up to work on a Monday, 100% back in the game. I don't have to do that with alcohol.
And the violence, like the violence that comes from alcohol. Yeah. So this is the issue, but there's a lot of tax they make off of alcohol.
Well, they'd make a lot of tax, I believe, in Australia off marijuana, because it's got the highest population to smokers anywhere in the world. I say that until it became legal in America, and I reckon it's changed now. Yeah. But before all that kicked off in America, Australia actually had that. So I'm surprised that the people aren't campaigning harder for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I have seen the statistics saying a lot of people in Australia are using it and that, but I used to see a lot of it earlier in my days, with my family or in the area I was getting around. I guess I see more people, but I haven't really come across many people, unless they just don't tell me in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
Because, I used to, when I was around it, my brother was a bit of a drug addict, and that he was using ice, and that's something else I've been through and understand, that and numerous members in my family have been on ice. So, and I look back where we started, and with the pot and that started off.
But do you think then that, on that note, is your relationship with drugs is as saying that now, completely different to mine? But marijuana doesn't seem to be as a gateway drug, because if you smoke marijuana, the last thing I want to do is take another drug. If you get a bunch of guys in a pub drinking alcohol, and they're more likely going to try snorting coke, taking a pill, and it's going to lead to something else. Marijuana, I don't believe, hand on my heart, don't believe that it's the gateway drug. I think if you smoke pot, you're happy with pot. You don't want anything else after you've had that. That was my experience of it.
I guess the only reason I look at it in some way as a gateway drug is because, like anything, like when, I guess I'll try to make a comparison. If you get on a little steer as a bull rider, it was fun, it was good, and you're enjoying it. It's something good, but how should I give that a try? It's pretty scary. It's not good for you. It probably will break my bones. I might die if I do that, but I'll give it a go. I jump on a big bull, and I sort of think it's a bit like, well, it's not going to make you go on that.
No,
but it's like.
But you could say the same about fast cars. You could say the same about fast bikes. It's not.
Yes,
it's not
that's
specific
right.
to a drug, is it? It could
no,
be anything.
That's right. So I don't think it's like alcohol. If I had the choice, I wouldn't have, and I drink alcohol.
Yeah.
But I'd happily say.
Do you immediately go and grab the whiskey bottle, or do you know better? It comes down to that as well, doesn't it?
Yes, it's conditioning and a cultural change in educating from a young age. If you've been brought up to understand, like my boy and my son and daughter, I'm bringing them up. They haven't wanted to, even have a sip of anything yet at 15 and 13. And I already explained to them about alcohol, and we have open communication. So I'm educating them about alcohol. And I know for a fact we all go through that stage. We'll have, a drink of alcohol. Most people do.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe same again, but we we aren't good at educating. This country isn't good at open communication with young people. We don't. Our schools have become such a curriculum-based thing where things are shoved at them that kids can't be individuals anymore. There's no the art, So I think that's the issue. So I think if we had the ability to educate kids, you could bring marijuana and pot, cannabis in, and educate well and make sure that cultural conditioning is right from the start.
Yeah.
But we never do anything right. So
if you go to Holland, there's marijuana cafes everywhere, and they sell a few cakes, and they'll give you a menu of different types of things. But everyone gets high. They don't go off and start icing up. You do get people that are on it, don't get me wrong, because you get it everywhere. But you'd think if it was that much of a gateway drug, you'd have huge problems with harder drugs out there, and it's not the case.
Do you think what about the alcohol? If you compared it to alcohol, do you think they have the same culture as Australia, going out and getting hammered on alcohol too, though?
No, but...
So that's what my worry is, that cultural difference between one country and another is that people are very different, like that cultural change.
What you've got is a very depressed Australia, right? And the most depressing drug readily available to everyone, alcohol.
I don't know that it's that depressed in Australia.
If you're depressed and you drink, you'll be really, really depressed. When I know a lot of people, older generations that have been to Vietnam and stuff, that drink a lot, and they're suppressing their emotion, right? I've spoke to people about this. I've had people on the podcast about this. They used to have a bit of marijuana and it changes their life. And it's not so much educating the youth, it's what it can do for adults as well. It's not about kids going off and doing this.
Plenty of good qualities in it. It's a natural.
They're using it in the US to treat PTSD. They're using it, and I look at all this and I think, why can't we just look deep into what they're doing? Send people over there, for God's sake, and go and have a go. Do what they're doing and experience it for yourself, and then people can make an opinion. Because what you might find, in my eyes, is a lot of people in Parliament are a bit older, and they're not readily just going to go out and try these things, but yet they want to have an expert opinion and judge it for everyone else. But unless you've ever tried something, I'm a firm believer, unless you've tried something, you shouldn't really have an opinion on it, because it's. And I don't say that to you. I'm just saying in general. This is a topic that it's. I see it in other countries going. I see family members back home using this stuff, and it's changing their lives. My mother, for one, she's got the what's it called, the bones crumbling. Can't remember the name.
But you're talking then, because you don't have the high from.
You don't have the high from CBD at all, no.
Yeah, so CBD should be just that.
Absolutely legal.
I believe that should be just like a pharmaceutical. You can just go in and buy it. To me, I think that. But although in speaking to some professionals, they do outline a few things with that, but I still think it needs to go through like a shop, like a pharmaceutical or something, that you know what you're getting. Because the problem when you start to deal with, there's pesticides will be sprayed on a lot of these things. So what you get is people growing it willy-nilly, and it's not regulated, and it's pumped out into the black market, for example, and you're just smoking bush. But what they've done is they put pesticides on that to stop it getting eaten by animals and so on and so forth. So you don't really know what you get, and they give you CBD oil, but it's actually mixed in with bloody root killer and bloody... That's why I'm saying, it should be ready, available, and as cheap as possible. But I'm not sure, just due to all the research I did with some of the professionals that have shown me certain things, that's the problems with what you're getting. You never know, and then you'll be paying
100%.
Will you get some fake stuff, so you never know? But at least,
so the government would be saving lives in theory by legalizing it, and the price doesn't have to be expensive, because a plant, it is grown properly, can be.
It's fully legal now to use it. It's only you've got to be prescribed by that process, which I think needs to be. Which
is so far behind. It's not saying legal, but then there's no one that could give it to you.
Yeah, and it should be openly available.
I spoke to a lady the other week, and she's had cancer for 20 years, and they're trying to get her to have CBD oil, but they're struggling to find a doctor for her to prescribe it. And she said, but this doctor, when they do qualify him, he wants $780 a month. For a 30 ml bottle of this stuff, which will last her a month. I'm thinking,
he doesn't want it. The supplier does.
But how many fingers must be in the pie?
Yeah, it's and it's again pharmaceuticals. It's a big dollar industry.
Well, they're going to mop up that. They're going to get the controlling aspect of this before it's legal, and these things will have to fall in place because they'll pay. Like you said, they got so much money, so they'll pay governments to say, right, I'm going to have the leading share of this, just like tobacco companies.
Well,
they bought it up in America, didn't they?
I think there's one company have the rights in growing it here in Perth, and I think there's 3 in Queensland or something. There's a few around the country now, and they've been given the legal thing to be able to, the only ones that can grow it. So it's not like that. This is what I'm saying is that it's legal, it's fully legal, but it's too restricted to make it cheap enough, and there's, because it's so hard to get, you're not getting enough people being able to use it, which, quantity brings price down, and that's what some people I was talking to that actually were bringing it in legally to sell and that in Australia prior to it being, having it grown here, and we need more people using it basically to bring the price down, because there's millions of dollars that go into like building the facilities and the research and all that, and for them to make money back when there's only like 100 people using it. It's been very minimal numbers being approved because the process, like I said, it was taking, it's been legal now, I think it was December, I think it's 2 years now maybe. It was legalised federally, but it's all that process of trying to get it through the states and the duplications and the access. So I think it just needs to be freed up in the states. Like I said, get rid of the duplications like in WA and any other state that's making it real hard, and just go RAM. You put in you go to a GP and perhaps a specialist, but preferably just a GP. They prescribe you and say, yep, you need it for pain. Bam, here you go. And you'd have a lot more people on it and it'd bring the price down. Mm-hmm. It's not going to get you high. It's not going to do anything. It's there to help you. No one's going to want to get on CBD for nothing. It doesn't get you high. So why will anyone go shopping around to get it? It's like, there is no benefit apart from healing pain. It's not like like some, the oxys and all that sort of stuff that they use to get high. This stuff doesn't get you high. It doesn't do anything. So I can't understand. This is the argument.
Neither do I. But I do then think that the pharmaceutical companies have got their fingers in the pie, because this goes against everything that they've built their fortunes on. And they're going to make it as hard as possible for as long as they can. There's
always people pushing and shoving from different directions because money speaks, like that's this world. People say that, money's not everything, but I tell you what, it sure is. It makes up a big part of this world.
Doesn't make you happy, but it can give you a lot of control in the ballpark, can't it?
Yeah.
Rod, we've done a bit there.
Yeah, it's been a big talking session. Hopefully the people that did tune in at any stage.
I think it's a good opportunity for you to speak and not, in a friendly environment, and not be not have any opposition calling you out and giving you some crap, and let you be Rod Caddies for a bit, and people can see you in a different light maybe. And
it's been great, mate. I just like
not put an ist on the end of you.
Yeah, it's good just for, and I like to talk about different subjects. As you said, people get to know you, and I'm an open book. So if people think, like you were challenging me on, the cannabis and different things, I love that. I love. Because that's what life is about, is debating. Okay, and then I'll go back and think, okay, I just learned something more. I might swing that way now. And I think good politicians get more and more advised and their opinions start to, as they get more educated on a certain topic, become have an ability to have a different opinion. There's nothing wrong with changing direction, because people go, oh, he's changed his mind. He said this, a year ago.
It's called personal development.
Yes,
it's not changing. People are entitled to change your mind. And it's you said this 10 years ago. Well, fucking 10 years ago, man. I've had 2 life cycles since then.
That's right. So it's been great, mate. Yeah, it's been good to chat about the difference.
And if you ever want to come on again and have a chat, if something ever comes up in the future and you want to do something, I'm more than happy to do it.
Well, maybe I'll be, once I get elected as a member, hopefully in the
once
next
you're Prime Minister,
election.
remember where you came from, right?
And I'll be back here saying this is the man that got me going.
This is it. The Refuge Chamber did it. If anyone wants to follow you, Facebook, you've got your, what is it, One Nation's, Pauline Hanson's One Nation Facebook page. Follow you on there. Yep. Keep up to date with everything that's going on. Guys, thanks everyone that listened and commented, and hopefully we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Greg.